Operation Gatecrasher is the first mission in an XCOM 2 campaign. You get 4 rookies and you have to kill a couple pods, or groups of aliens, if you're not playing on Legend, and plant a bomb on an objective. You only get this mission if you're not playing with the tutorial enabled. Otherwise you get a different mission where all your actions are fixed and most of your squad dies. Really, you should only do the tutorial once, because you only get the one squaddy out of it, and it's really boring. By default you only get the 4 rookies, which can be pretty challenging. If you disable the Lost and Abandoned mission though, it will replace one of the rookies with a faction hero. However, it also makes the first chosen random and they spawn during your first Haven Retaliation mission. In this mission we're doing the 4 rookies variant because it's the harder option. Rookies are about as close to useless as you can get. They only have 65 aim, which means that even if you have an enemy stood out in the open with no cover or other bonuses, they'll still miss 1 in every 3 shots on average. Sometimes more. Probabilities are fun. So when it comes to Gatecrasher, I usually focus more on grenades, elevation bonuses, and Overwatch traps. There are 2 pods on the map, though there's a third one if you play on Legend. An Advent Trooper pod, and another with an officer and 2 troopers. Typically what you want to happen is you find the Advent Trooper pod first and wipe it out, and then you set up an Overwatch trap and let the other one patrol into you. The officer pod usually hangs around the back of the monument, which you want to avoid while you're dealing with the first pod. You really don't want to have both active at the same time. Having more than 1 pod active is usually a bad thing regardless of what mission you're on. Starting the mission, the first thing I want to do is find the Advent Trooper pod and set up an ambush. When you're in concealment, it's really useful because you don't activate pods until you attack or move in their detection radius. So you can use this to set up a good ambush or, on timed missions, sprint towards the objective. At the start you want to move 1 unit up carefully, to see if it's safe, and then bring the rest of the squad up with them, making sure to put everyone in cover. When it comes to the first pod, the way I usually handle it is to have most of my squad up in a high position and have another one close to the pod. The closest one throws a grenade, dealing a minimum of 9 damage and hopefully killing one of them. Then I have 2 of my squad on Overwatch to catch the rest of them when they scatter. Overwatches from concealment don't suffer any of the penalties you'd normally get. Normally, they have a 70% aim modifier and can't crit, so they're not very good in standard fights. I only really use this tactic in this spot, because rookies are just so useless. After this, you get grenadiers with their launchers, rangers with their shotguns, etc. You don't have to rely on your Overwatches hitting the right targets. You can just launch a grenade after they've scattered and hit the important targets, then follow up with accurate shots from stuff like your ranger or your sharpshooter. Grenades deal 3 to 4 damage, so hopefully you just kill one of the troopers outright. I also tend to leave one of my soldiers free just so that if something survives the Overwatches, you can use them to finish it off. If I wasn't playing with Lost and Abandoned enabled, this would be my faction hero. Even if they're in cover you can just use another grenade to guarantee the kill.
Heads down! We're busted! Is that all you got?
Unfortunately, we both didn't get a grenade kill and we missed one of our Overwatch shots. Now we have 2 troopers remaining but only 1 grenade. This is actually a fairly risky play, because we could easily wander into the other pod. What I'm trying to do is see if I can get a good flanking shot. We could easily grenade it, but I want to try and preserve the loot if he has any. 70% isn't good enough though. We did destroy the loot, but luckily for us the other trooper decided to flee, and we didn't activate the other pod. Enemies can sometimes flee if the rest of their squad is dead, but it's not consistent. Now that we've dealt with the first pod and the other ones not activated, we want to carefully regroup everyone and reload and overwatch. If this were a timed mission we'd have to press on, but when there's no timer it's way safer to do this for a few turns. Ideally, the other pod patrols into us while we're overwatching. There's no guarantee though that they'll move towards us, or even move at all, which is what ends up happening here. So I need to start Overwatch crawling towards them and see if we can bait it out. Overwatch crawling is one of the safest tactics in XCOM, and it's also one of the main reasons why they added turn timers to XCOM 2. The idea is that you use one action to move a soldier up, and if you don't contact the enemy then you move the rest of your squad up behind them and then put everyone on Overwatch. You just rinse and repeat until you find them. The benefits are that if you contact the enemy with your first move, then you've only used one action, and if the enemy patrols into you on their turn then you get a bunch of free overwatches when they scatter. The downsides are that it takes a really long time and it can be quite tedious. So I'm going to skip ahead about 5 minutes to when we find them, but first I want to quickly discuss target prioritization. When it comes to targets in XCOM 2, I'm usually trying to focus down the most immediate threats, the ones that are most likely to deal damage. There are some enemies that are more likely to miss or just take non-lethal actions as their first turn. Officers are really similar to troopers, it's just that they have higher aim, higher crit, and can use marked target. Marked target adds a plus 15 aim bonus to a certain target, so they can effectively buff themselves and other aliens. This makes them a pretty high priority for me in the early game. They can even use marked target and shoot in the same turn, which means that if you've got a unit inside of an officer, then they're really likely to take damage during the alien's turn. Troopers on the other hand just have 65 aim. Yeah, that's the same accuracy as your rookies. So they'll also occasionally just miss someone who is stood completely out of cover. They can still deal damage, so they're still a threat, but they're definitely one of the lower enemies on my priority list. With that we'll go back to the regular mission. Ideally we'd want to fight around a building for the height and full cover, but sometimes the aliens just don't want to cooperate. You can probably tell this is a pretty awkward situation. I know that the pod is right on the other side of this pillar because of the sound cues. I'm just trying to get as close as possible to bait out the overwatch. What you're seeing here is a little exploit where you can tell where aliens are, even out of line of sight. Two units can't occupy the same tile, so the cursor won't let you move to certain tiles if there's a unit already in it.
I'm going. Overwatch! On Overwatch.
Come get some!
Quiet. Do you hear something?
The Advent officers seem more capable than the grunts. We're not sure whether they chalk it up to training or stricter mind control.
Check it before you get too close.
Finally we managed to spring our overwatch trap, and even better we managed to hit all of our shots. We've just wiped out the officer and a trooper instantly and severely injured another one. Since we've still got 2 grenades left and both troopers are less than 4 health, we've essentially already won.
Heads down!
This flank isn't really necessary, I just didn't realize we'd already lost the loot. All my soldiers already have promotions. It's just a good habit to get into, to avoid accidentally destroying loot if you forget about it. You've just got to be careful if there are other pods around, obviously.
We need to get those charges planted on the double. Menace 1-5, rendezvous at the extraction point. Status confirmed, squad is clear. Detonating charges.